Hey there, my name's Liam and welcome to No Code with Liam. Today, I'm going to show you how to create a form that only accepts unique records. So looking at our base here, we've got a contacts tab with a bunch of different emails. And I want to create a public form so that anybody could, fill out that information and then populate a record in my Airtable base. The one thing I want to avoid though is duplicates. This is a pretty common problem that I see with a lot of customers, but there is a way to prevent duplicates. And we're going to do that by creating an automation that searches that email against our database, and then if it finds a duplicate, deletes it. So how do we do that? Let's get started. So we're going to jump into automations here and just start building our automation. Our automations in Airtable kind of work with two basic movements, a trigger and an action. A trigger is really going to kick off your automation. And then actions are sort of what happens once the trigger has occurred. So our trigger is going to be when a form is submitted. And that's in our contacts table. We're going to select our form. So that's automatically just going to give you only the forms that exist in that table, which is helpful. So we're going to choose our record. This is just a test record so that we can create our automation. So we've got our test there and we're good to go to the next step. So the next thing we want to do is search that record against our database. There's a number of different ways that you could search it. I'm going to search email because it's a fairly good, unique identifier to use, but there's definitely more complex and sophisticated ways that you could go about it. But for now, we'll go with the email case. So I'm going to select the Find Records. Again, select the table that it applies to. We want to look in contacts to see if there are any contacts with the same email. I'm going to do it based on a condition, which just means that if certain things match, we're going to identify it. So we'll set this to email address. And our operator is going to be is. And here you'll notice this little gear. I find it's really easy to miss that. But there's a pretty important step here that we need to switch this to dynamic, which means that we're just going to fill this with data that's coming in from our form as opposed to something that is unchanging. So I'm going to go to dynamic. You see this plus appears. And we want to search the email address. This step is really just going to loop over all the records we have in our contacts and then see if there are any matching ones. So we're going to go ahead and test that. And we found one record, which is great. That's what we'd expect. So for our next action, what we want to do is set up some conditional actions based on our search. So what is expected is that we should only find one record when a record is created. However, in the case that there's more than one record, we want to delete that record or we want to do an action. In my example, I'm going to delete it. I'm going to show you how to delete it, but there's other things you could do. You could set that, that record into a status of duplicate instead of just deleting it, but I'm going to go with the delete option. So we're going to set up a conditional action here and set our conditions. So our conditions are going to come from our search. And you'll notice that there's a little list properties here where there's a 1. Basically what that means is that this just telling us how many records were found. So we found 1, which is what we'd expect. So we're going to set our condition to be if it does not equal to 1, meaning that there's more than 1. You could do more than 1 here. I'm just going to go not equal to 1, then do something. So this is really the trigger to say that, okay, we should delete this record if it's not equal to 1 based on our search. So I'm now going to add my action. And in Airtable automations, they don't yet have an action to delete, but you can do that with a pretty easy script. I don't really know scripting. I basically just copied this from a community forum, which is always a great resource. But I'll walk through that, what that looks like. So I've got my script here. I'm just going to copy that into my code editor and change a few things. So I want the table name to match the one that we're working with, which is contacts. And then I want to add an input variable. An input variable is basically what is going to be changed or acted on. So in our case, we want to get the record ID of that form submission so that we can actually delete it, so that the script knows what it can delete. So to do that, I'm going to go add input variable. I'm going to grab this as the name, throw it in here, and then we are going to grab the record ID from our creation and put it there. So how this is working is it's basically substituting out variables here with ones that we pass from our form submission. So this record ID is going to be inserted into the script, and then it's going to delete that record. So we're going to finish that. So that's looking good. We're almost there. We've got one more step. So the final step is an otherwise statement. In our case, it's not super relevant, but it's always kind of a nice thing to add. So I'm going to click our other conditional action here and say if no other conditions are met. So we'll just call it an otherwise, just do nothing. But based on some of the other examples that you could do, you could update a status, for example, if you're doing more of a use case where you're just labeling those things, you're not deleting them, you could update it to complete. But in our case, we're just going to leave that blank because there's nothing else we really want to do. So I'm going to turn on our automation and then we're going to test it out. So I'll jump back to my data, get our form up here, and I'm going to just grab Tanya's email here and throw that in our form. Doesn't really matter if the name doesn't match because we're just checking against the email address. So you'll notice my last name doesn't even match there. I'll go teacher and then submit. So now you can see it was created in our base and it's been deleted. So everything has worked as expected. Our form submission went into our base. Then the automation searched against all of our contacts and the script deleted the record. So I hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to post in the comment section. Have a great day. Bye.